The Championship was up and down this weekend as Norwich City won big. Cardiff City have now sacked their manager after tasting defeat for another time in this Championship campaign. Leeds United were the victors in that one. But then we're going to take a look into every single fixture across the course of the weekend. All the timestamps will be down in the description, so make sure you go and check that out to check out whichever part of the video you want to look at. We're going to be going through all of the games in this video, but before we do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content coming your way across the course of this season. Now, if you haven't done so already, let me know your thoughts down in the comments of your team over the course of this season and over the course of this weekend. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about your own clubs. There's obviously a lot going on in the Championship this season, but should we get straight into the match reviews? So Stoke City hosted Hull on Friday night and it didn't quite go to plan. Now, I thought Stoke City were fairly decent in that first half and just collapsed really in the second half. It was a really good turnaround by Hull City. You can't take anything away from them, and you have to give them credit for that because I think Stoke set up really well to start off with, and I think they did really well, obviously picking up that goal from Wilmot after 30 minutes. But once Palmer got that first for Hull City, it felt a bit of an inevitability that Hull City would go on to win. Now, if we look at the numbers behind the game, 43% possession to 57% in Hull City's favour, 1.02 XG to 1.81 in Hull City's favour again, 14 total shots to 13, this time in Stoke's favour, 3 big chances to 1. And it's a common thing in this division that taking your chances ultimately means you're going to win games, and that is what Hull City did. Now, if you look at the two sides, I have to preface by saying a lot of the players in that Hull City side, I have got not a clue about a lot of them. I'm not going to lie and turn around and say I'm this football genius, but one thing I do know is Casey Palmer is a really good player. Had him at Derby County years ago, and I thought Casey Palmer was like 36, 37 at this point, but obviously he isn't. He's recently moved to Hull City and he's done really, really well. Drama as well. I believe he came in from Leeds, if I remember rightly. Really good player. I really like him. But you look at this Stoke City side, they've got some really good players. Cannon, Kumas. I think Berger's fairly decent as well. And it's something which they're going to have to learn over the course of this season, Stoke. And obviously, with their new manager at the helm now, after Steven Schumacher being sacked, it's not quite gone to plan. Now, I think Johansson had a bit of a stinker for one of the goals, if I remember rightly. But you can correct me down in the comments. Obviously, they've got some good young players like Tejel coming through as well. But you look at the players coming off both benches, it's not like either of these two sides are struggling for strength. I think Hull City have done really, really well, and this victory puts them in a much better position than it was beforehand. They now go level on points with Stoke with 1 win, 3 draws and 2 losses. Obviously, they lost their 2 back-to-back heading into this one. Stoke City have now lost 2 back-to-back themselves, so it's going to be interesting to see how this one progresses over the course of the season. Hull City have obviously wanted a big turnaround after sacking Liam Rosenior for, I think he finished 8th last season, 9th, something like that. It's one of those where they will be expecting much more than just sitting towards the bottom end of the table. Norwich City ran rampant at Carrow Road as they were 4-1 winners versus Watford. Now, the game was quite tight for a large portion of the game, and Doyle picked up the scoring with just 3 minutes played before Andrews equalised for Watford. But Sainz, Nunes and, however you say that name, Crucene, we'll say, scored to make it 4-1. It's a really good result for Norwich, but it's not one which I'm too happy about as they face Derby County this upcoming weekend. 55% possession to 43%. Really good, really good performance from Norwich. Really good chance creation. 4 big chances, 2.72 XG compared to 1.67. 11 shots to 19 in Norwich's favour and 2 big chances for Watford. Now, this Watford side is a really good side in my opinion. I personally think that it won't be long until Festi Ebiseli jumps into that starting 11, although I'm not quite sure how he's played for them since he's moved over. But he is a player who is really, really good in this Championship division. He's obviously spent 2 years at Udinese in Italy, but that's something which they'll progress with over the course of the season. Obviously, really good performances from Norwich City, and as you can see, Festi Abicelli didn't even get off the bench, so maybe that's one which will not happen. Cade Gordon making... Is that his debut? I imagine that's his debut for Norwich City. And if we do look at the table now, you can see that Watford are currently sitting in 8th place. They haven't won in 3, just 1 point out of 9. Norwich City have picked up 6 points in their last 3 games with just a defeat in between. They come up against Derby County next. But what a brilliant performance from Norwich City. Queen's Park Rangers and Millwall went head to head, and it was a 1-1 draw. Fry scored in the 40th minute. Watmore scored in the 34th. It was a fairly interesting game, but not one with much to really shout home about. Millwall will obviously think they should have won the game. You look at the XG, you look at the number of shots, the big chances created, but they were unable to take their dinner. Disappointing one, really, for Millwall in the grand scheme of things. Langstaff finally getting to make a start and picking up an assist on that start as well. You look at the team for QPR, Dembele, Fry, good performers, Cook, Nardi in goal as well. And it's one of those for me where both of these sides are probably going to be around each other come the end of the season. Really good game. Not particularly a great one for the neutral, but you look here, QPR sitting on 7 points after 6 games, Millwall sitting on 5. It's going to be interesting to see how those two get better over the course of the season. Obviously, I personally don't believe Harris will be in charge come the end of the year with Millwall, but that's something which will be seen later in the day. After tasting defeat in their previous game versus Plymouth Argyle, Sunderland bounced back with an absolute wonderful goal by Chris Rigg in the 24th minute to make it a 1-0 victory versus Middlesbrough. Now, Middlesbrough haven't quite put in any of the performances that I anticipated since that Leeds game, in my opinion. 37% possession for Sunderland to 63%, 1.17 XG to 1.28, 9 shots to 12, 1 big chance to 2. Now, a big thing that I've spoke about over the course of this season with this Sunderland side is how are they going to bounce back from tasting defeat, and what an excellent way to do it with a really, really good performance. Obviously, the signing of Mepham is an absolutely brilliant one, in my opinion. You look at this team here for Middlesbrough, and it's not as if they're a bad side in the slightest, but you look at Mick Hamilton, I think they spent £5 million on him, can't even get into the team, and I think that just speaks volumes of the quality at Middlesbrough. And I think Michael Carrick is going to find himself in real danger if he don't start picking up some results, because you look at Sunderland sitting second, you look at Middlesbrough in 12th, they are, 7 points away from those automatic promotion places, just 3 points away, from Leeds United in 6th place. And Middlesbrough want more. They have struggled over the course of the last 18 months, in my opinion, and that's something which they'll have to progress on through over the course of this season. But Sunderland take all 3 points from the Stadium of Light. Bristol City faced up against Oxford United. Armstrong and Wells sealed the deal to make it a 2-1 victory after Rodriguez scored in the 28th minute. It's another game where I think Oxford have put in a fairly decent performance. Obviously, you look at the recent performances of Bristol City and you think this isn't a great result for Oxford. They could have got something here, but times change, things happen, and obviously a penalty obviously sealed the deal. 2.32 XG for Bristol City to 1.74 for Oxford. 19 total shots to 7. 5 big chances to 3. 56% ball possession to 44. It's a really interesting one, this one. And I have to say, you look at both the sides, and obviously you look at that Bristol City side, and in my opinion, it's head and shoulders above the Oxford United team. But Oxford United seem to be putting in some really good performances under Des Buckingham. And I just have to say, Louis Sibley moved on from Derby County to go and play in midfield, and I think he's barely touched the pitch in the Championship. And you look at the likes of El Mazzuni, Dembele, Kioso getting straight in as new signings. And I think at some point you have to say he's not just sitting on the bench because he's a new signing. He's sitting on the bench because he's not quite good enough. Now, you look at where these teams are sitting. Bristol City now just 1 point behind Oxford with 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. And Oxford United sitting on 9 points with 3 wins and 3 losses from their 6 games. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see how this season progresses for both sides. But Bristol City take all 3 points at Ashton Gate. Burnley and Portsmouth went head-to-head at Turf Moor, and Portsmouth must have thought they were in real luck when they took the lead in the 42nd minute. However, Burnley and their quality turned up in that 63rd minute. Sarmiento scoring then, and then Brownhill scoring in the 94th minute to take away all 3 points. Now, you look at the numbers, and it's not necessarily a disappointing performance for Portsmouth, in my opinion. Burnley is certainly going to be one of those teams up at the upper echelons of the division. They conceded pretty much all the possession. We've seen Derby County do this. We've seen Oxford do it this year. Coventry City have done it as well over the course of the season, but 70% possession to 30% in Burnley's favour. 1.04 XG compared to 1.38 in Pompey's favour. 18 total shots to 5 for Burnley, and 2 big chances for Portsmouth. Now, Portsmouth might think they should have taken a point, but sometimes you just have to acknowledge the quality on show. And I personally believe that this Pompey side, I don't think it's the worst team in the Championship, not by any stretch. I don't think it's the worst squad in the Championship, but I think it's the worst of the 3 promoted sides. It's going to be interesting to see how they sort of progress over the course of the season. They've obviously had a really, really difficult start. They've faced Leeds, I think they've faced Middlesbrough, Sunderland, and now Burnley. I think they've had Luton Town in there as well. And you look at the quality of those sides compared to the quality of these ones, and I think they've picked up 3 points in those games. It's really disappointing for Messinio that they've had that sort of start, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles in the Championship. Now, if we look in the division, Burnley currently sitting 3rd, 3 wins out of their previous 5, taking just 1 loss, which I believe was to Sunderland. You then look at Pompey, sitting currently on 3 points at the bottom of the table. But for me, they might be sitting in 23rd, and they might be a bit disappointed with that. But they've not faced any of the easy teams per se, or the teams that they're going to be around at the bottom of the division, and that's something which we're going to have to wait and see how that happens across the course of the season. But Burnley take all 3 points from Turf Moor. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL League One and Championship content heading your way across the course of this season. We spoke about Errol Bullock getting sacked yesterday and the League One results, so make sure you go and check those 2 videos out, and I'll catch you in the next part of this one. So, as I just mentioned in that little bit of an advert for coming to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Cardiff City have sacked their manager. It is game over for Errol Bullock, and it comes after this 2-0 defeat to Leeds United. They picked up a red card after 23 minutes, and when you're facing a team like Leeds, it doesn't make it any easier if you don't have 11 men on the pitch. Now, I think it's been a long time coming, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. I don't really think I even have to talk you through these ones, because it just simply was Leeds United. All game Leeds United, and that's probably as a result of the red card. Would it have been a bit tighter if they had 11 men on the pitch? Probably. But ultimately, Cardiff City have not been great this season, and they certainly weren't a threat. Now, we obviously look at the lineups, and you see it was Bagan who got sent off, and I don't really think there's much to say about Leeds. Really good performance with against a 10-man side. They did what they needed to do. You look at the players coming off the bench for them as well. You look at even some of the players who don't get off the bench. You look at Patrick Bamford just sitting there, not touching the pitch, and it is really interesting looking at this Leeds United side. A really, really good team. You look at the table now as well. Leeds United currently sitting 6th on 11 points, and they'll obviously want more than that, but they've had a fairly decent start. Only lost once, and it's just one of those. You look at Cardiff City, sitting rock bottom of the Championship, only scoring once and only picking up 1 point in that exact same game. Really disappointing for Cardiff City. Leeds United will take it and run. Coventry City are still yet to find their feet in this division. A team who I sort of called a potential playoff contender fell to another defeat, and realistically, was it a good performance? Did they deserve anything? Probably, but unable to put the ball in the back of the net themselves, and a Pereira own goal in the 34th minute after going 2-0 down wasn't a great performance for me. And I think there's a lot to talk about with Coventry City, because we're getting to that point now where we're obviously, I think I've always said it, where you are around November October, November time is sort of where you're going to end up come the end of the season, unless you have a massive downturn in performance or a massive uplift in performance, which obviously can happen with a new manager and things like that, or just a little bit of an unbeaten run. And you look at this, and I think Mark Robins has done a fantastic job over the years at Coventry City. Now, I'm not going to talk through the numbers of this one. I'm just going to give a bit of a thought piece here, because you look at the likes of Coventry City, who they've obviously lost a lot of good players over the course of the last 12 to 18, 24 months, really. And they've not really, yes, they've brought in players to replace, and they've spent money, and they've spent good money as well. It's not like they've spent pennies, but they've just been unable to capitalise on that. And if we do look at the league table a little bit, you look at Swansea City sitting in 7th, you look at Coventry down in 19th. Yes, it is only 6 games, there's 40 games to play, a lot can still change. But right now, it's been very disappointing this season. If we do just go back, it's 1 win, 2 draws and 3 defeats over the course of those 6 games. And they're still waiting to find their feet, Coventry City. I think Swansea City can take plaudits from this result. I think it's a brilliant one for them. Cullen and Cooper popping up with some really good goals. And it's one of those for me where Mark Robins could end up on borrowed time if this performances carry on. Obviously, they have spent money and they've got some really good players in their squad, and it's just not quite good enough. Luton Town take a 2-1 win versus Sheffield Wednesday. A bit of a dubious red card in the 74th minute literally brought Luton Town back into the game. And I think realistically the big conversation has to be about refereeing in the Championship for this game, because what did Bernard handball it? The clip I've seen, it looks as if it comes off his chest, shoulder area, sort of like here. But I'm not the referee, I can't make that decision, but Carlton Morris stepped up for the penalty, scored, and then scored again in the 88th minute to seal all 3 points. And obviously Barry Bannon had popped up with a goal earlier for Sheffield Wednesday at Kenilworth Road, but it's one of those for me where Luton Town have got to find some form eventually, and sometimes it comes with a bit of luck, and I think this one is certainly that case. Now, 59% possession to 41%, 2.12 to 0.87, 15 total shots to 12, 3 big chances to 2, and it is going to be interesting to see what does happen over the course of the season with Luton Town, because you look at the lineup, they've probably got one of the best squads in the division, and they built really well, and obviously they've had to change systems a little bit this season with losing the likes of Ross Barkley and some of those players which moved on in the summer. But they've brought in some really good players as well, and they still had the likes of Carlton Morris and players like that as well. And that's what we're going to have to be interested in looking at this season. Now, I do think the red card was a bit dubious, and I'm not entirely sure how I do feel about it, but it's one of those, you can't change it. Once it's happened, you've just got to live and learn. It's 2 wins on the trot now for Luton Town, as Sheffield Wednesday fall to their 4th defeat in 6 games. Well, really, it's 4th defeat in 5. They haven't won since that opening day victory against Plymouth Argyle, and that's disappointing for them. But what's going to happen next for these two sides? Luton Town are going to have a difficult period at some point, and have they already had it? Let me know your thoughts down below. Sheffield United and Derby County went head to head, and I don't quite think the numbers are going to express how tight this game actually was. I think Sheffield United had a ton of possession and had some brilliant opportunities, but ultimately Derby County were defensively resolute. The Gustavo Hamer goal came from a sensational free kick, but is it a free kick which should have been stopped? Now, Derby put 3 men in the wall, and Ben Osborne was one of the ones on the outside, and for me, you don't put a player that small in the wall, especially in an area like that where it's, in my opinion, it's obvious they're going to have an attempt at goal. I don't think there was ever a question about him putting the ball into the box. And the big disappointment for me about Derby County, and I've spoke about this a few times, and I even made a video about Derby County's away form. Was it yesterday? Sunday, I think it came out. And it's the lack of attacking output we have in these games away from home. And we're really good at being in between both boxes, but in each box we're just disappointing, and we can't score goals away from home. We've obviously only scored, I think we scored 3 and 4 of all our away games. We obviously head to Sunderland next, which is going to be disappointing. We look at the two lineups, and obviously the Sheffield United side is much, much better. And I don't really think that's a question. I think Derby did really well and competed really well in this game, but it's not enough when you want 3 points to just compete. You need to create chances. Now we look at the form table and the table on the whole. Sheffield United sitting 5th, 3 wins on the bounce. Derby County sitting in 10th, 3 wins out of 5 with 2 defeats in there as well. It's 3 wins and 3 losses for Derby County, sitting on 9 points, sitting 10th in the division. And so long as they stay away from that relegation zone, I'll personally be happy. I think it was a good performance by both sides, and Derby County defended well. Sheffield United took their only chance, realistically, their only massive chance of the game, and Derby County were unable to take any of theirs because they created none. Plymouth Argyle would have been hoping for another last-minute miracle versus West Brom, but that didn't come to fruition as West Brom scored a 1-0 winner with Josh Maja in the 62nd minute, putting Wayne Rooney and Plymouth Argyle to the sword. And for me, I think Plymouth did fairly well in this game, completely honest. Now, I know they lost, but West Brom are one of the top teams in this division. I think I've said it in every single video talking about the Championship. I really like Carlos Corberán. I think he makes an average team a competitor. And you look here, 49% possession to 51, 2.33 XG to 0.78, 17 shots to 17, 4 big chances to none. Now, if you look at the lineups, I think both sides have players who are capable of impacting games. I think West Brom have more of them, and obviously when you look at the bench, I think there's more quality on that West Ham bench than there is on the Plymouth Argyle bench. I think Plymouth Argyle are really still waiting for Morgan Whittaker to hit his stride. He's been really poor this season, in my opinion. Obviously, he did score that goal against QPR, which realistically wasn't meant to be a shot. I think he was competing for a 50-50, but it's one of those, and I think West Brom are going to be wonderful this season. I think if you look at the table, they're probably sitting in that top 6. No, they're not even sitting in the top 6. They're top of the table. There's 3 teams still unbeaten: Blackburn, Sheffield United and West Brom, and West Brom are leading the way with 4 back-to-back wins. I think their draw came against Leeds United, and it's one of them for me where you can't really complain about West Brom. Plymouth Argyle can maybe complain sitting down in 20th, but I think so long as they stay in the division and keep building, I think they'll be more than happy, and it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this season transpires. And closing out this weekend was a disappointing, terrible 0-0 draw. A red card in the 42nd minute for Greenwood and another one in the 89th for Beck. I think there should have been another red card as well for one of the Preston players. Looked as if he attempted to bite the Blackburn player. I have a feeling it was Beck who was bitten, but nothing came of it. The linesman ignored him and things like that. And I just think it's a disappointing game. For a game with 10 men for 40 odd minutes, Blackburn Rovers struggled to really create anything. And yes, Preston defended deep and were able to sort of keep Blackburn at bay, but you'd think if you're playing a team with 10 men, you'd be able to make something happen, and they weren't able to. And it's disappointing for Blackburn. It's a great result for Preston, if you ask me, because obviously going into this game, they probably would have wanted a win, obviously, but once you get that red card just before half-time, it sort of seals the deal for me. Blackburn Rovers currently sitting in 4th place with 12 points, and Preston are currently sitting in 21st with 5. Now, they've had 1 win since Heckingbottom's come in, and they will progress forward, they will get better, but ultimately right now, they're just not quite there. Now, there's been a lot of trials and tribulations this weekend, and we will be back for the match previews tomorrow. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL, League One and Championship content. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football week.